I spent 6 months planning that housewarming party. 6 months picking the perfect curtains, the perfect dishes, the perfect wine, because this was supposed to be the day my parents finally looked at me with pride. My name is Emily and I'm 24 years old. This is my story. Everyone was there. My coworkers, my neighbors, even the lady who sold me the property came. But the 2 seats right in front of the fireplace, the ones labeled, reserved for Mom and Dad, they were still empty. The party had started 20 minutes ago. I kept glancing at the door, pretending not to. Pretending I wasn't counting every minute they were late. My friend Jasmine leaned close and whispered, "Maybe they got stuck in traffic, Em. Don't worry, they'll come." I smiled back, but my stomach twisted. Because I knew my parents, and they never got stuck in traffic. Someone in the crowd, my Aunt Pam, raised her voice just loud enough to be heard. Poor thing. Guess her parents had better things to do. A few people laughed. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced a smile and walked to the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. It's funny, I always thought success would silence their judgment. That if I worked hard enough, earned enough, maybe they'd finally say, "We're proud of you, Emily." But that moment never came. I turned, hoping. It was just the caterer. By the way, before I go on, where are you listening from right now? Chicago, Texas, California? Tell me in the comments. I love knowing how far these stories travel. Anyway, I tried to shake it off. Walked back into the living room, lifted my glass, and said, "Thank you, everyone, for coming. It means the world to have people who believe in me." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. But even as I smiled, I could feel that hollow ache behind my ribs. Because the 2 people I wanted to see me never showed up. I picked it up. A text from Mom. "We won't make it. Something came up." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just another casual dismissal, like I was a dentist appointment they'd forgotten to cancel. I wanted to cry. But then, I heard my father's voice in my head. "Don't be so sensitive, Emily. The world doesn't revolve around your feelings." And somehow, those words hurt worse than the text. If you've ever worked so hard just to make someone proud, and they still made you feel invisible, you'll understand what I did next. So if this moment already hits home for you, take a second, subscribe to this channel. I walked out to the balcony to breathe. The night air felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every time they'd ignored me. I could hear the laughter from inside, Jasmine's voice, my coworkers cheering for the champagne toast. But I didn't move. I just stared at the city lights and wondered why being successful still made me feel so small. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo from Ryan, my brother. Him and my parents, sitting around the dinner table, smiling. Caption, "Family night." I froze. My throat burned. Because that wasn't just a picture, it was a message. They hadn't forgotten my housewarming. They'd chosen not to come. The laughter inside sounded distant now, hollow. And for the first time that night, I realized. I wasn't angry. I was done. I picked up my glass, finished the champagne in one gulp, and whispered under my breath, "You'll regret this one day." The room behind me blurred, voices faded into background noise. All I could focus on were those chairs. Still waiting. Still empty. It's strange, isn't it? How 2 empty chairs can feel heavier than a crowded room. I didn't know it then. That night, after the housewarming, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window until sunrise, replaying every word. Every smirk. Every memory of them choosing my brother over me. The first time my father looked me in the eye and made me feel small. I grew up in Evanston, just north of Chicago. We weren't rich, but my parents loved to act like we were. Fancy dinners we couldn't afford, designer things bought on credit, all to keep up appearances for their friends. And in that performance, there were only 3 stars. Dad, Mom, and my brother Ryan. I was just the background noise. When I was 12, I won my first science fair. I came home with a ribbon, grinning ear to ear, and my mom barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice, sweetie," she said. "But Ryan's got a basketball tournament this weekend. Don't forget to cheer for him." I remember standing there, holding that little blue ribbon like it meant nothing. Because to them, it never did. High school didn't change much. Ryan got into Stanford, with help, connections, and their full support. I had to fight for everything. I worked part-time after school, just to afford application fees. And when I got into the University of Illinois on a scholarship, my father laughed. "So you're going to community college," he said with a smirk. "Save some money. Maybe you'll learn how to be practical." That was his way of saying I wasn't good enough. And the worst part, Mom just stood there, stirring her coffee, pretending she didn't hear it. I used to pray they'd see me differently one day. That maybe when I build a life of my own, they'd finally say, "We were wrong about you, Emily." But life doesn't hand you closure. Sometimes it hands you humiliation, wrapped in a family dinner. It was last summer. Ryan had just gotten engaged, and my parents threw a barbecue at the old house. I showed up wearing the nicest dress I owned, the same shade Mom said looked too bold on me years ago. I brought a gift, a bottle of champagne, and my best attempt at peace. But the moment I walked in, Dad chuckled under his breath. "Well, look who's here, Miss Independent," he said loudly. "Did you finally find someone rich enough to marry you yet?" The whole table laughed. Even Ryan. My cheeks burned so hot I couldn't breathe. Mom leaned in, pretending to whisper, but she wanted everyone to hear. "You should smile, Emily. You're making everyone uncomfortable." I stared at them, the people who raised me to believe love was earned through humiliation. And something inside me snapped. I set the champagne on the table. My hands were shaking. "You know what?" I said. "You can stop pretending you're proud, parents. You never were." Dad laughed. Not because he thought it was funny, but because he knew it would hurt. "Oh, Emily," he said, still so dramatic. "You'll understand when you actually do something with your life." The room went quiet. Ryan looked away, and before I could stop myself, I slapped him. Mom gasped. Ryan jumped to his feet. Dad just froze, stunned. "You'll regret that," he said coldly, rubbing his cheek. "You always do." I turned, walked out, and didn't look back. The screen door slammed behind me, louder than any apology they never gave. That night, I slept in my car. It was parked a few blocks away, in front of a grocery store. The streetlights flickered against the windshield, and as I stared out into the empty parking lot, I made myself a promise. One day they'll see me. One day they'll remember this moment and wish they hadn't mocked me. That was the night I decided to build my own life. Brick by brick, dollar by dollar, with no help, no family, just the fire they left burning inside me. Have you ever had someone you loved mock your dreams? Tell me in the comments, because I know I'm not the only one. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who cut the deepest. It took me 10 years to become the woman they couldn't ignore. 10 years of working overtime, eating instant noodles, and selling houses to people who had everything I didn't. Every time I closed a deal, I'd picture their faces. And every time someone said congratulations, I'd hear my father's voice whisper, "You'll regret that." Maybe he was right, because even after everything I achieved, even after that housewarming party, I still wanted them to see me. To know I wasn't the failure they made me out to be. But when they didn't show up, when that text came through, I realized something far more painful. They didn't hate me. They just didn't care. And that's worse. That realization changed me. It hardened something in me that used to forgive so easily. And when I found out what they were planning next, it didn't just break my heart. It gave me a reason to strike back. I thought cutting them off would make the pain fade. It didn't. It just echoed louder. Because silence isn't peace. It's just a reminder that the people you loved most stopped calling. A year passed after that barbecue. A year of quiet birthdays, unanswered messages, and moments where I almost reached for the phone, then didn't. But when I finally bought my first house, the one I hosted that party in, I told myself it was time to bury the past. Or at least pretend to. I'd built that home from the ground up. Not literally, but every tile, every color, every corner of it was chosen with a purpose. Warm, elegant, not too flashy, something that said, "I made it, and I did it without you." The housewarming was supposed to heal me, but instead, it reopened every wound I'd buried. And for weeks after that night, their absence became all I could think about. I told myself I didn't care, but one afternoon, I found myself staring at their number on my phone. And before I could stop myself, I pressed call. "Hello." It was my mother. Her voice was cold, distant. "Mom, it's me," I said quietly. "I know you were busy that night, but I'd really like for you to come see the house. Just you and Dad." There was silence, and then a sigh. We'll see, she said. Your father's been tired lately. That was her polite way of saying no. But 3 days later, they showed up anyway. It was a bright Saturday morning. I remember straightening the cushions 3 times before opening the door. They stood there, my mom clutching her purse, my dad looking around like a realtor inspecting property. So this is it, he said, stepping inside. Smaller than I expected. I laughed awkwardly. Well, it's just me. I don't need a mansion. He said. Guess that's one way to look at it. Mom walked toward the kitchen, running her fingers along the counters. Marble or laminate? She asked. Marble, I said, smiling. Oh, she replied. It's nice, though your cousin Jennifer just renovated hers with granite. You'd love it. Every word felt like a little knife, dressed in politeness. But I bit my tongue, because that's what I always did. We sat in the living room. Dad barely touched his coffee. Ryan walked in halfway through. Apparently they'd invited him along. He dropped onto my sofa, spread out, and smirked. So this is where you live now. It's cute. Feels temporary. I laughed lightly. It's mine. That's what matters. He grinned. Guess hard work finally paid off. Not that anyone expected it. Mom chuckled. Dad didn't even hide his smirk. And just like that, every ounce of dignity I'd built came crashing down under their laughter. They left after 20 minutes. No hug. No congratulations. Just Dad's parting words. Don't overextend yourself, Emily. A big house can be a big mistake. He had no idea how right he'd be. That night, I was cleaning the living room when my phone buzzed again. A text from Jasmine. Check Zillow. You're not gonna believe this. I opened the link. It was their house. Listed for sale. My heart froze. They were selling the home I grew up in. The one place I used to imagine returning to if they ever wanted me back. At first, I told myself it was fine. People downsize all the time. But then Jasmine sent another message. Scroll down to the comments. And there it was, a line from Ryan's account. Excited for Mom and Dad to move in with us permanently. Families where they belong. I read that sentence 3 times. Each time, it cut a little deeper. It wasn't just that they were selling the house, it was that they were choosing him again. Choosing to build a new life without me in it. I sat on my couch, surrounded by everything I'd worked for, and realized how empty it all felt. Because what's the point of success, when the people who raised you still see you as nothing? That's when the idea came. At first, it was just a thought, a passing flicker of pride and pain. But the more I thought about it, the sharper it became. If they wanted to move out, fine. But I'd make sure they'd never forget where they came from. I spent the next few days pretending I was fine. But deep down, I was plotting. Because if there's one thing my parents taught me, it's how to play nice while keeping your blade hidden. I logged into my work account. Searched the property listing again, the one for their house. My heart thudded as I read the price. It was steep, but not impossible. And right then I made a decision. A dangerous one. The kind that doesn't come from anger, but from clarity. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the listing for my parents' house, the one place that used to feel like the center of my world. And all I could think was, they don't even know what they're giving away. Every hallway in that house carried a memory. The smell of Mom's Sunday pancakes. The creak on the second stair that always betrayed me when I tried to sneak out. The garden Dad promised to fix but never did. And now it was about to belong to a stranger. Unless. I stopped it. I opened my savings account. Checked the balance. Then the other one. And the credit cards. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But I wasn't the broke college girl they used to mock anymore. I had equity. I had good credit. And I had motive. So the next morning, I met with a realtor, pretending to be just another curious buyer. Hi, I'm Emily, I said, shaking her hand. I saw the listing for 2781 Willow Creek Drive. I'd like to make an offer. The realtor blinked. Oh, that property's moving fast. Any connection to the owners? I smiled. You could say that. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of that same white brick house, a pen in my hand and a purchase agreement in front of me. The moment I signed my name, I wasn't just buying a house. I was reclaiming history, piece by piece. When the closing date came, I didn't tell anyone. Not Jasmine, not my coworkers, not even Ryan, especially not Ryan. I wanted silence. And when the papers were finalized, I stood in the driveway, holding the keys. It was poetic. The same house they once told me I'd never afford was now mine. A week later, I got a call. It was my mom. Her voice shaky, hesitant. "Emily, your father and I are thinking of moving back into town. We didn't realize how stressful it would be selling the house. It's taking longer than we thought. The new buyers, they're hard to reach." I bit my lip to hide a laugh. "Really? What kind of people buy a home and stay silent?" "The worst kind," she said softly. "The ones who don't care who they hurt." If only she knew. That night, I walked through my house. The moonlight spilled across the hardwood floors. The same walls that had echoed with their laughter now listened to my footsteps. It didn't feel like victory yet. Not until I decided what to do with it. So I called a contractor. And then another. Within 2 weeks, I had a team. We gutted the kitchen, stripped the wallpaper, replaced the furniture, turned the house that mocked me into a monument of who I'd become. But then something unexpected happened. Something that made my stomach drop. Jasmine called me one morning. "Hey, Em, you might want to sit down." "What's wrong?" I asked. "Your parents, they're living with Ryan. But things aren't good. Apparently, he's been borrowing from them. A lot. So, it wasn't just emotional. Ryan had been using them. And now they were trapped. Financially dependent on the son, who always came first. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered every laugh, every sneer, every moment I stood invisible in my own family. Pity evaporated. You ever have that moment where life gives you a chance to balance the scales, where karma finally stops knocking and just walks in? If you have, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. A month later, I put the final touch on the house. A for rent sign in the front yard. I told the realtor to keep it discreet. No public listings. Just private showings. Then, like a twist written by fate, I got a message in my inbox. "Hi, I saw the property on Willow Creek Drive. We're a retired couple looking for something close to the city. It looks perfect." The name stopped my heart. David and Karen Wilkins. My parents. I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt unreal, like the universe had joined my game. They didn't even know I owned it. They just wanted to rent their old house from me. I sat there for a while just thinking. And then, I smiled. "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Wilkins." I typed back. "The property's available. When would you like to move in?" When I watched them pull into the driveway weeks later, boxes stacked in the trunk, Mom's favorite vase cradled in her lap, it took everything in me not to laugh. They smiled, thanking the owner they hadn't met yet, unaware that their new landlord was their forgotten daughter. And as I watched from across the street, hidden behind tinted glass, I whispered, "Welcome home." They moved in on a rainy Thursday morning. I remember sitting in my car across the street, watching the moving truck pull up to the curb. The house looked different, brighter, cleaner, like it had finally let go of the weight it carried for years. But watching my parents walk up that driveway again, it stirred something inside me. Not joy, not anger, just this deep, hollow ache. The kind that only comes when you realize you've already become the villain in someone else's story. They had no idea who I was to them now. To them, I was just the property manager. A woman who handled their lease through email. A stranger with the power to decide whether they stayed or left. And for the first month, I kept it that way. They sent rent on time. Mom planted flowers in the front yard. Dad repainted the porch railing. It was almost poetic. They were unknowingly restoring my home. But the quiet didn't last. 2 months in, I got a message from my realtor. "Hey, Emily, the Wilkinses are late on rent. Want me to send a notice?" Late. Of course they were. At first, I wanted to let it slide. Then I remembered every time my father mocked me for not being responsible enough. Every time my mother compared me to Ryan. So I replied, "Send it, but be polite." Weeks went by. They paid late again. Then, they missed a month entirely. And then came the voicemail. "Hi, this is Karen Wilkins. We're so sorry about the delay. My husband's been unwell, and our son's having money problems. Please, just give us a little time." Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, I almost broke. But then I thought about that housewarming party, the empty chairs, the laughter, the humiliation. And just like that, my sympathy turned to steel. I drove over that evening. No warning. Just parked a few houses down and walked up the path. When Mom opened the door, her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. "Emily!" "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Mind if I come in?" The house smelled the same. Her perfume. Dad's old cologne. The faint scent of lemon cleaner she'd always used. Everything looked so familiar, and yet I didn't belong there anymore. "What are you doing here?" she asked finally. I smiled faintly. "Checking on the property." Her face twisted in confusion. "What property?" That's when I placed the folder on the table, the lease agreement, the title deed, and my name printed across every page. "This one," I said quietly. "You've been living in my house." For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're lying." "No," I said. "I bought it when you listed it. You sold it to me, you just didn't know." She looked pale, trembling. "Why would you do that, Emily?" "Because you didn't come to mine," I said. "You mocked me. You left me out of my own family. And I wanted you to feel what I felt, invisible." Her hand flew across my face. A sharp, echoing slap. "You think this makes you better than us," she hissed. "You've become cruel." I didn't flinch. I just looked her in the eye and whispered, "No, Mom. I've just become what you made me." He looked at us both, confused. "What's going on?" "Ask your landlord," Mom said bitterly. "She's your daughter." The silence that followed was the kind that tears through the air. Dad's shoulders sagged. He looked at me like a man seeing his past sins reflected back at him. "You really bought this place?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "And you're proud of that?" "No," I said softly, "but I'm done apologizing for surviving." They moved out 3 weeks later. No goodbyes. No closure. Just silence. The same silence they'd given me years ago. When I walked through the empty rooms after they left, I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge doesn't heal. It only replaces one kind of pain with another. But it does teach you who you are when you finally stop needing approval. I kept the house, rented it out to another family, a kind couple who reminded me of what love is supposed to look like. And every time I drive past that street now, I don't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet kind of peace. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's growth. If you've ever had to build yourself from the ashes of someone else's doubt, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. So if you felt something today, make sure you hit that subscribe button.